PilotSafety.org teaches free FAA safety classes all over the U.S. thanks to help from Avemco, the national sponsor of the FAA Wings program. Most people know Gary is the top international expert in single pilot IFR using autopilots, Avidyne, ForeFlight, and Garmin avionics. But to really understand the guy in the pink shirt, let's look at the numbers. Gary is a lead rep for the FAA safety team. He has over 8,300 hours, is an ATP, and a master flight, instrument, and multi-engine instructor. Of the 112,000 instructors in the US, less than 800 have ever been named Master Instructor. Gary is one of only 9 to have earned this designation from the great state of Texas. Gary has trained airlines, flight schools, and pilots from Alaska to Australia in over 50 different aircraft types, including light jets, turboprops, and pistons. Gary was chosen to be the only national training provider for 2 huge companies, Avidyne and Genesis SDEC. Please welcome my friend, the guy in the pink shirt, the one and only 2019 FAA National Flight Instructor of the Year, Gary Reeves.
Thanks. I can only listen to that so many times. Good evening, everybody. We're getting lots of questions on where are the handouts. Well, on your control panel, there's actually a tab called handouts, and there's 3, 4, or 5 handouts, whatever we uploaded. If you can't find them, don't worry about it. We're going to give you a link to a special website where they will all be. You don't need any of the handouts for tonight's class. It's just the various advisory circulars and FAA guidance documents that I'm referencing tonight. So please absolutely use the questions feature as much as you can. You need to participate. I do want to recognize some special friends. The CFI Pro Tips course, this one, as well as several others, has actually all been sponsored by Avemco, who not only sponsors pilotsafety.org and specifically the CFI Pro Tips program that we're doing over the next 2 years, but they are the national sponsor of the FAA Wings program. So we couldn't do this without Avemco, and I want to thank them very much. So what do I know about you? Well, I actually know quite a bit about you, even if I've never met you. I know you like teaching. So here's your first chance to participate using the question feature. What do you like most about teaching? Again, this is the audience participation part. So use the questions feature to respond. What do you like most about teaching? Julio's got a great answer. Julio Rivera. Hi, Julio. Learning along with them. Absolutely. Charles Alworth. Hey, Charles, my friend. How are you? Charles likes the students. Yeah, me too. I love making new friends. Richard's got a great answer. Seeing people's light turn on. Yeah, I think a lot of us feel that way. Great answer, Richard. Thank you. Matt's got a good one. Oh, Matt, you should write poetry. Matt says, and I'm going to butcher your last name, Matt Sincere, I guess, helping students realize their dreams. We really are. Dreaming is, flying is a dream. Brad, yeah, we've heard this so many times, Brad, watching the aha moment. Andrew has a great response that I've never heard from any other flight instructor before. What he likes best about teaching is the discovery flights, the very first lessons. That's just awesome. And we're getting tons of really great answers. And I can't get to them all, but yeah, absolutely. So, you know what else I know about you? That you want to be a better flight instructor. Why? Well, because you're here. The people watching this program are absolutely the very best flight instructors in the world, not because you're listening to me. We will not hold that against you, as a matter of fact. That would normally take points off your score. Uh, no, you're the very best flight instructors in the world, and I'm not blowing smoke. You're the very best flight instructors in the world because you had other things to do tonight and you invested more time in getting better for your students. And I just think that's so amazing. So thank you. Why do I do this? Well, I do this because I had a flight instructor named Harry Leitcher. Harry Leitcher is the best flight instructor I ever had. He was a retired Wells Fargo banker, and he just didn't like banking. So he retired and became a commercial pilot and then a flight instructor. And I did my private pilot in 40 hours and I thought I knew everything. And then I did my instrument rating in about 44 hours. I thought I knew everything. And then I went to Harry Leitcher for my commercial, and he quickly slammed my ego right back into size and proved to me that I didn't know anything. I thought I was a hotshot pilot because all my other instructors said I was, and I was just an idiot with a pair of wings. He would absolutely not sign me off my commercial check ride, and I was annoyed. I got a high test score on my written. I could do all the maneuvers. He said, "You will fail absolutely." And he would prove to me that I was not ready because he would ask me a simple question like, here's the emergency checklist for an engine fire. I'm like, uh-huh. He goes, now tell me 3 situations in which case this is wrong and will make the situation worse. Well, what do you mean? It's always right. Well, no, it's not. So tell me, why don't you go up to the whiteboard and diagram the fuel system for this Piper Aero 3? Well, it's in the book. I know what you draw it out. What he did is he actually made me a pro. He saved my life. He turned me from a hotshot know-it-all into a professional pilot. And as cruel as this sounds, he even made me go to FAA wings classes on Thursday nights with him at Long Beach. He got me into the wings program. So Harry Leitcher unfortunately passed away in a skydiving accident. He actually loved being outside of an airplane in the air more than he loved inside it. Passed away from a heart attack. He didn't suffer at all. But truly the greatest instructor out there, and he made me who I am. So I have an interesting GA accident rate goal. A lot of people have the same goal of reducing GA accidents, and I don't think that's acceptable. Why? Because I don't think any fatalities are acceptable. So I have a really interesting goal that I hope you'll join me in. My GA accident rate fatality rate has to be 0. See, I don't think reducing it is enough. So let me tell you why. Let's say next year we reduce the GA fatality accident rate to where only 50 pilots die instead of 100. That sounds good to some people. It sounds good to me at first. It sounds good to a lot of people until I simply ask you to pick the 50 pilots out that you want to die this year. Then it sounds horrible. You don't want anybody to die. So our goal can't be just to reduce. Our goal has to be absolute 0. Now, some people say that's totally unreasonable. Well, I'm okay with being unreasonable. I had a friend who owned a sheet metal factory, and his goal was 0 workers' comp injuries. And everybody told him, well, that's unreasonable. You know, people are working with sheet metal. They're always going to get cut. They're always going to get hurt. He was the only sheet metal factory in the US that for 7 years straight, had 0 workers' comp injuries because he wasn't okay with reducing. His goal was 0. So even if we never get to 0, I would like you to share with me in that goal, but I can't get there alone. I need you as partners. So what can we accomplish by working together? Well, your credibility and recognized expertise will always go up with more education, which means you'll make more money, but that's not why you're here. Your clients will be much safer. But I'm going to say some things tonight that are contrary to popular belief, that are new, and sometimes that scares people. A lot of the things I wrote in my single pilot IFR pro tips book, thank you very much, bestseller. We sold 5,000 in the first year. Some crazy things that most people don't agree with because they were taught differently. It's not because it's wrong, it's just because they were, we're fighting their primacy. The favorite quote I have is by a very smart guy named Dr. Wayne Dyer. They are afraid of new ideas. They are loaded with prejudices, not based upon anything in reality, but based on if something is new, I reject it immediately because it's frightening to me. What they do instead is just stay with the familiar. I actually encourage people to drop the landing gear and put approach flaps in 5 miles before the initial approach fix, never to intercept the glide path. Because I think intercepting the glide path is too late, and I've got some accident reports that say that leads to gear up landings because you're fixated on other things, not paying attention. Well, I said that at a national conference, and the head of the safety committee took me outside and said, if you drop the gear 5 miles before the initial approach fix, you're going to cause these airplanes to have stall spin accidents. And he was really upset. Now, I've never quite figured out how dropping the landing gear magically makes a high performance plane flip upside down into a stall spin. But why was he so upset? Because it violated what he knew to be true. And he's a really smart guy. So if I say something tonight that seems new and contrary and upsetting, just breathe and go, maybe. And please remember that a lot of what I'm saying tonight is just my 2 cents. Now, I do want to start out tonight with saying I am going to try the very best I can to get through this. I just got home from a 2-week trip in Europe and came home with a very bad sinus infection, cold, bronchitis, quite possibly mange. I'm not real sure what it is. It's not COVID, but I'm actually quite ill. My voice is not good. If I mute the microphone occasionally, it's only to protect you from coughing and sneezing. I am going to try very hard to get through this. If I can't for any reason, I will promise I will re-record it within a day or two as soon as my voice comes back. So if I'm a little tired or if my voice goes in and out tonight, I do very much apologize to you all. So this was the top 5 mistakes that good flight instructors make on flight reviews and instrument proficiency checks. And as it turns out, that topic and title was my mistake. My mistake was thinking this would just be a simple webinar. I do these all the time. I can usually throw them together in about 3 days. I've been working on this for 3 weeks. And the more I get into it and the more input and feedback I've gotten from you, the more I see this is not a one-time simple webinar. So this is some of the input that people like you have shared with me about reviews or IPC mistakes, why they make the mistake, and how they can do better. And on vacation in Europe, I was working on this on my laptop the entire time. And, I'm like, okay, well, they say this, and okay, well then, no, he's got a good one. Oh, well, I didn't think about those. Well, maybe if I just put them into categories. Well, that one doesn't fit. And then I keep getting more, and then I'm doing more research, and then I'm reading more advisory circulars, and then I'm getting deeper into the wings program. And then every single day, I'm getting more responses and more responses and more responses. And my brain is doing this. And this is what I'm getting on a daily basis. So for 2 days on the cruise, at the sea day, I didn't even look outside. All I was doing was that in front of the laptop until my wife very gently took the laptop away from me and said, stop. It's going to be a big project. Make this webinar just the start. Make it a series of video webinars. Create a program where we can all work together to mentor new CFIs. Put together a book for new CFIs. And this is what I would like you to join me in a pledge. This is not pilot safeties doing this. This is let's all work with really great organizations who've already made huge strides, like NAFI and SAFE, AOPA and EAA, the FAST team, and something called the Wings Industry Network, okay? And I don't want it to be done by me. I'd like it to be done by us. Let's do this as a team. So if you've ever seen me teach live, I always do this very funny, at least it's funny to me, audience oath, and I'd like you to participate, but it's gonna be a slightly tweak. So everybody please raise your right hand and just pretend I can see you. I state your name. I know you said state your name. And again, it's much funnier in front of a live audience, but we've got over 600 people here on this presentation. Will be an active participant in this program. You need to use the question feature. You need to talk to me, at least as much as you can on the keyboard. Share your input, share your opinions. If you disagree with something, tell me why. Tell me what you would do differently. Download the handouts. If you can't find them, again, make sure I'll get you to a website where you can find them. I'm going to launch 3 polls. Please, everyone, answer those polls because it's going to be a very important part of this ongoing project. And there's going to be a group project that we're all going to work on together afterwards if you're willing. And most importantly, please share this program with others. All right, anytime you see a red flashing camera, please take a screenshot. This entire program, of course, is copyright by pilotsafety.org, and I'm verbally telling you that you can take screenshots and share it in any way or any format you would wish at any time. If you want to take screenshots of this stuff, and again, you can watch it again as much as you want, and you want to print it into handouts, you want to share it with other people, you want to post it on Facebook, I don't care. This is absolutely free domain because we just want to make the whole world better, okay? So let's start out with a quote from one of my favorite people, a very smart guy named Bill Ackman. Experience is making mistakes and learning from them. And I've made a lot of mistakes. I mean, I have a lot of experience. I've flown for a little over 2 decades. I've got over 8,300 hours of real world experience. I owned a big flight school in Los Angeles, and I've made all kinds of mistakes on flight reviews and IPCs. So anytime I say a good flight instructor makes this mistake, I promise you, I'm not calling anybody out. I've done it first, okay? So make sure you share your mistakes with us tonight too. So what I was able to do finally is just kind of organize this into kind of the top 5 general categories of mistakes, and we'll do a much deeper dive on future programs. Number 5, the category is accepting flight reviews and IPCs that instructors shouldn't even agree to. So what are some flight instructors and IPCs not to accept? Well, any client who wants it done in 2 hours. Any client who wants it combined with some other objectives. And especially anytime the instructor is not qualified to do a good program. This was the most common mistake that people shared with me in a poll before this program. The 2-hour cookie cutter flight review or IPC. What's wrong with the 2-hour cookie cutter? Well, hey, it teaches absolutely nothing. You're not helping the student out at all, right? It doesn't meet the FAA standards. And it puts the client in danger because you're not making them better. So here's your first chance to participate. Why do good flight instructors do a 2-hour cookie cutter flight review or IPC? Why do you think good flight instructors do this or have done it in the past? Anna McPhee has a pretty good answer. It's easy to do it that way, right? Absolutely. Aaron's got a good input, and I hear it all the time. They kind of get lazy. I don't know about lazy, but maybe complacent, definitely, right? Kristen's got a great answer. It's the first one, and they just don't know better. Matt has a really good answer. Customer satisfaction. It makes the customer happy, right? Jane, a very honest and a totally legit answer. They need the money. That's, look, flight instructors when they're new are not the richest people on the planet. I get it. Murray's got a question, says IPCs and flight reviews are supposed to be proficiency based. Yeah, but I don't think you can do that in 2 hours, my friend. Rick has a good answer. The way it's always been done. Yeah, absolutely. Nathaniel Hicks says that's all that's needed if using the Wings program. Well, no, it's actually going to need a quite a bit more. When I say 2-hour cookie cutter, I mean like the 1-hour ground, 1-hour flight review, but I understand what you're saying. Lots of people saying, like Corey says, felt like the minimums, right? It's easier. They're desperate for the hours. Yeah, all of these are good. Sarah's got a really good answer. Pressed for time with an FBO scheduled. Some people are saying for a friend, like Christian says for a friend. Alice is a really good answer. They know the pilot pretty well, right? Yeah, those are all great answers. All of you are giving great answers. Okay, so let's move on. What should you not combine flight reviews and IPCs with? And I see it all the time. People will put up on Facebook, hey, I need a flight instructor in Washington to deliver my new Cessna 182 down to Oregon, and it's a 3-hour flight, and I'd like to do a flight review at the same time. Well, no, because it's not the same thing. One is moving an airplane. You can't do a flight review while moving an airplane. You can do part of a flight review while moving an airplane, but you're really not getting into all that's required, right? The absolute worst, going to breakfast with a friend. There's a lot of danger in the meal with a friend and a flight review thing. The danger is it's no longer a professional activity. Now it's social. And I got a lot of feedback on this on the initial poll, right? That you shouldn't mix social with a professional activity. What are some other activities that you shouldn't combine a flight review and an IPC with? Or what are some other dangerous things about doing a flight review for a good friend? Kristen Hoffman, hi Kristen. Combining a flight review and IPC together, you can, but it would definitely be a much longer program. Corey's got a good point about doing it with friends. Lack of impartiality. I'm sorry, Corey said lowering the standard for your friends. Brad said lack of impartiality. Sorry, Brad Berger. Brad Berger is a friend of mine, and I was misreading some names there. Alice, aircraft checkout in a new type. I'm going to actually talk about that. Let's come back to that. Scott, absolutely. Being objective on your friend's ability is very, very hard. Sure. Right? Max Bernstein. Hi, Max. Max, I think, has the best answer for doing one for friends. Scared to give them honest feedback because they might find us harsh. And I can't even keep up with all of the great answers. Great. Good job, guys. Sorry, I had to mute myself for a second. So what can you combine a flight review and an IPC with? Well, certainly transition training to a new airplane. You know, I do something every 24 months where I'll go to, like I did SimCom for a TBM 850, and I don't even fly TBM 850s. I just did the SimCom course for that. But you can include an IPC with a SimCom course because that makes sense, right? So Alice mentioned earlier, mixing it with a new aircraft checkout. I actually like doing the flight review and an IPC with the new aircraft checkout if you add more time to it because it makes you better at the new aircraft. But again, you would definitely have to add more time. You could certainly mix it with other endorsements, you know, like a high performance endorsement or complex endorsement. Again, it would make them better at it, right? The biggest mistake I see CFIs make is accepting a flight review or an IPC request from a client when they're just not qualified to do it. They're not qualified to teach on the aircraft. They're not qualified on the GPS display or autopilot systems. They're not qualified to fly in the mountains. There's a lot of things that will mess something up. The dangers of unqualified CFIs doing flight reviews or IPC is A, they may just teach nothing to the client, or they may teach the wrong thing. The worst is it puts the client in a lot of danger. And the example I'd like to share with y'all is that is a Cessna 303. And everyone's like, what's a 303? It's kind of halfway between a 300 and a 310, I think, right? A 303 is called a Crusader. It's a kind of a cabin class. 310 is the easiest way to explain it. Doesn't have a whole lot of power, but it's certainly a very nice airplane. I apologize, folks. And I was flying with a very nice guy and a very good pilot in the Chicago area, and I was doing my 3-day private Avidyne or Garmin Mastery training program, which includes, you know, a flight review and an IPC. But you know, it's 20 hours of training and 40 hours or 30 hours of video work before we get there, so it's pretty extensive. And he was doing great. And on the last day, I said, okay, well, you know, we need to do some single engine work for your flight review and your IPC. And he goes, well, I don't want to do that. I said, well, I mean, we have to do that. He goes, well, I don't want to shut down an engine. It's hard on the plane. I go, well, I don't have to shut one down for real. I mean, I'm happy to shut one down for real, but we don't have to do that. I'm just going to simulate an engine failure. And he goes, no, I don't want to do that. That's hard on the plane. Well, it's not. It's actually in chapter 4. It's a normal procedure. It does no harm to the engine at all. And everything you're afraid of, this whole shock cooling thing, trust me, I got friends who will explain this is not a thing. And he was just really adamant that he just did not want to do this. And I said, well, no problem at all. But look, you're going to get your certificate for the 3-day program. No problem at all. You've absolutely earned it. You're a very good pilot. But I cannot sign your flight review and I cannot sign your IPC because it doesn't meet the FAA requirements. And he goes, well, that's not fair. Everybody else has. And I went, what do you mean everybody else has? He goes, well, none of the other instructors on my flight reviews and IPCs ever wanted to do any single engine work. So when was the last time you practiced a single engine emergency or a single engine approach? 8 or 9 years ago? Stop. you're a dead man. I didn't say that to him, but that's what I'm thinking. And you all are too, right? Really good guy, private pilot, flies maybe 100, 120 hours a year, takes safety seriously, has not practiced any engine failures, engine out on takeoff roll, engine out in flight, engine out approaches in a decade. I'm like, who's been doing your flight reviews? Oh, well, the young instructors at the airport here love to do the flight reviews because they've never flown in a 303 before. Yeah, they shouldn't be doing your flight reviews. They don't know how to fly a 303. They're afraid of doing an engine failure too. They're hurting this guy. They're going to kill him. So I finally talked him into a good look, buddy. We got to do this. I mean, look, you're a dear friend. Like, you're not a client. I really like you. You're a friend of mine. Like, I honestly care about you. I think your wife is spectacular. You and your wife are not safe if something happens. He goes, okay. I go, listen. So what we're going to do is let's just level off at 6,000 feet. We're going to tell ATC we're just going to maneuver in the area at 6,000 feet. So I put in the request, say, like a block altitude, 4,000 to 6,000, and maneuver within 5 miles. I said, okay, so here's what's going to happen. Disconnect the autopilot and just fly this heading for me. I go, so this is what I'm going to do. I'm going to simulate and simulate only failing your right engine, okay? So what I'm going to do is I'm going to slowly pull your right throttle back to idle. You will push, and then I'm going to stick up my thumb, okay? And that's going to pretend to be the right throttle. You're going to advance the left throttle and my thumb, which will be the fake right throttle, all the way. Then you're going to push both mixtures forward. You're going to push both props forward. Then you're going to identify that which engine you think has failed, and remember how to do, yeah, I think so, okay. Then you're going to verify that, okay, by pulling my right thumb back and nothing changes, yes, okay. And then you're going to fix, okay, and we'll talk about feather and fuel and all of that stuff, right? He goes, okay, no problem. I go, again, I'm going to pull your right throttle back now. And I very gently pulled the right throttle back slowly and put up my thumb. Within about 12 seconds, he was 90 degrees off course and had lost 2,000 feet. He completely locked up, didn't even advance the throttles. He pulled up, and if I hadn't taken controls of the aircraft, would have put us into a stall spin. He was massively uncoordinated and totally off course. So I said, okay. And he was sweating. And I'm like, if you think he was sweating, you should have seen me. I'm like, okay, don't worry about it. Don't worry about it. Okay. So, okay, let's do it again. But this time I'm going to do it with you. And it took us about 6 times of me saying, I'm going to do this engine, and me walking him through it before he started to react normally, right? So all of these flight instructors who just wanted crusader time, who didn't understand the systems, weren't helping the student. They weren't doing him any favors. They were putting his life in a whole lot of danger, right? The worst part about doing a flight review or an IPC in an airplane you're not qualified for is you may have an accident during training, right? How many accident reports do we read about where the flight instructor actually caused the accident, right? So why do good flight instructors accept flight reviews and IPCs in airplanes or avionics or in areas where they're not qualified? Well, I think we've all done it. I know I did when I was young, and I think a lot of it. Overconfidence, that's how you build experience. You might need the money, you might be trying to build the time. You might be afraid to, admit you're not good, but it's really, really simple. If they're not qualified, or if you're not qualified, the best thing you can do for the client and yourself, simply refer them to somebody else. One of the best instructors I ever knew was a guy named Richard at a competing flying school in Long Beach. So the Long Beach Flying Club was a direct competitor of me at Sunset Flying. And Richard was absolutely the best instrument instructor on the planet. Like, knew more about flying instruments than I would ever know, and still probably knows way more about flying IFR than I ever will. He could absolutely do a partial panel NDB hold in a 20-knot crosswind. But Richard didn't do GPS. And this was, 18 years ago, but he didn't do GPS, didn't want to learn GPS, didn't like GPS. So anytime he had a client that had a plane with a GPS in it, he would send them to me for 3 to 4 lessons because I was the GPS guru. I was the guy, well, now I'm the guy in the pink shirt. At the time, I think I wore yellow, but I was always good with GPS. And people at the flying club just absolutely hated that. Like, why are you sending them to Gary? Well, because Gary's the best at GPS, and my students love that. Well, what people at the flying club never quite got is I sent just as many, if not more, students to Richard when they were struggling with something I wasn't good at. So referring them to another person, we are not competitors with each other. We're all on the same team. All the flight instructors are working for the same goal. But if you're not qualified in an airplane or you're not qualified with an avionics suite and you refer them to somebody who is good, asked to sit in, that's how you could get the experience so you could start doing them. Yes or no? Do you think you can be a good instructor if you don't have a mastery, not minimums level of training on the GPS or FMS system in their airplane, ForeFlight or the EFB, and the autopilot and the display in their airplane? You think you can be a good instructor for a client if you're not a top level mastery, not minimums level of training on their GPS, ForeFlight, their autopilot, and their display? Yeah, of course you can. What should a CFII be able to provide for an IPC on the GPS, display, autopilot, and the electronic flight bag? An absolute minimum of 4 hours of ground training on the common errors, the limitations, and the emergency use. I didn't say teach. I said you should be able to provide it. And that means referring it to somebody else, or, hey, assign him some video training. Like, oh, hey, look, there's a plug for a guy in a pink shirt. We have a CFI referral program. If anybody wants to refer their clients to our Avidyne, ForeFlight, Garmin, or whatever video training programs, lots of instructors do that and then do the IPC. You don't have to be an expert in everything. You just got to be good, right? Well, why shouldn't every instructor just learn every avionics package and every aircraft? I'd like y'all to take a screenshot of that, and it's something I truly, truly believe in. This is a quote, well, just for me. The instructor who is an expert at everything isn't great at anything. And I think we've all met that person, right? Haven't we all met that instructor who, I can do that. Oh, I'm great at that. Sure, sure, sure. There's a lady instructor that worked for me at Sunset Flying that was a retired airline pilot. She'd never flown any GA. She had her flight instructor back from a couple, like 10 years ago, and just kept it current. And I gave her a job, and was working with her. And every time somebody came into the pilot shop and said, hey, do you know anybody who can do a flight review in a G1000 Bonanza? And she'd go, oh, I'm great at that. She had no idea how to work a G1000 or fly a Bonanza. But she would just say, I'm great at everything. And the student went, well, okay, and hire her. That's not fair to the student, right? The only way to become great at something is to not do most everything else, right? Okay. I got a comment from Kate I want to read real quick. So this is a good question. Kate Proctor, hi Kate. On my last flight review, my favorite instructor would not do the flight review in my Bonanza because she was not familiar with the plane. Very good instructor. So we rented a 172 for the flight review, but then the flight review was not specific to my plane, sort of. That was bad. Which choice is better? Well, I really, really like that your flight instructor was honest and said, I don't know the Bonanza. I would then just add to it and maybe find an American Bonanza Society BPPP instructor to do your next flight review in the Bonanza. I'd go back and forth, but I really think your instructor was an absolute pro with that. All right, the number 4 category, signing flight reviews and IPCs that they shouldn't sign. Who here, besides me, because I'm the first one to say I've done this, has signed a flight review or an IPC when the client was a little shaky on some skills, or when it only took 2 hours? Come on, we can be honest with each other, right? So why do good flight instructors do that? And I think we've already answered that. Because you don't want to offend people, there's some pressure, right? And I think there's a lot of confusion, right? Listen, I think we've all done it, right? Right? Yeah, there's some people out there, and I'm not even going to call you out by name, but there's some people going, yeah, I've done it too. Well, at least I'm not the only one that will admit to it. But I think there's some confusion. So is a flight review a check ride? Well, it's not a check ride because you can't fail it, but you may not pass it. But the standards are the same as the ACS check ride. Well, how did they come up with that? Well, what's required for a flight review? So 6156, which we have all read about a billion times, says the minimum is 1 hour ground and 1 hour flight, which honestly is never going to be enough, right? But there's an advisory circular, 6198D, that specifically mentions an advisory circular 60-28. They must demonstrate the aviation English language standard. That is part of a flight review legally. So if you work in an area with a lot of international students or a lot of English as a second language pilots, yay for them, man. They are so much smarter than me. I can't even imagine taking a driving test in another language, let alone talking and passing a written test in another language for an airplane. But you may not sign a flight review if they cannot demonstrate the aviation English language standard, and you need to read that advisory circular. That's true on a check ride, and it's true for a flight review as well. NAC 6198D absolutely says that they must perform all maneuvers to the ACS or PTS standards. So that means if you're gonna do a stall, they have to be able to perform the stall to ACS standards, right? So what are the minimum flight reviews for the advisory circular 6198D? Takeoffs, stabilized approaches to landings, slow flight, stall recognition, stalls and stall recovery, spin recognition and avoidance, recovery from unusual attitudes, and operating an aircraft by sole reference to instruments under actual or simulated IMC. You cannot complete that in 1 hour. There's no chance, right? So this is the minimum for a flight review according to the FAA by their own advisory circular. So if we looked at the private pilot ACS, here's maneuvering during slow flight. They have to demonstrate the ability to clear the area, select an entry altitude that no lower than 1,500 feet, establish airspeed, and they must maintain the specified altitude plus or minus 100 feet, a specified heading plus or minus 10 degrees, an airspeed plus 10 minus 0, and the specified angle bank plus or minus 10 degrees. If they cannot demonstrate slow flight to that private pilot ACS standard, you're not supposed to sign the flight review. Kind of like exactly like a DP would do on a check ride. What else do you think? Now, this is just what else do we think should be included in the flight portion of every review? Well, I would certainly do short and soft field takeoffs and landings. The thing I'd like people to do, and Pete, just start chiming in on the questions. What do you think we should add, right? I think we should teach go-arounds, not landings. The stabilized landing thing is so many flight instructors have taught them to save every bad landing. Look, if you're not on speed, on path, stabilized at 500 feet, go around. We need to teach people to go around and get it right, not save bad landings. I think we need to do a lot more of emergencies. And what else? What else? What else do you think we need to add, right? Definitely simulated engine failures. Thank you, Panat. Right? Scenario-based training. Right. Bill says he always does at least a minimum of one go around. Tim, power off landings, dead stick, you bet, baby. Right, that's great. Engine failure and emergency procedure. Aaron, this is a great thing. Aaron Duty has a great thing. How about dealing with unruly passengers, right? Steven says no flap landings. Dustin says performance maneuvers, right? Lots of people are saying power off 180s, right? Adding distractions. James is my friend. James says go-arounds are free, right? Steep turns. Yes, Vernon, absolutely. We should be doing steep turns, right? Malfunctions. Yes. Spot landings. Unique scenarios. Lost comms. All of the, yes, you guys are going to break my keyboard. Yes. All of these things are good. Now, what about an IPC? Is an IPC a check ride? Actually, legally, yes, it is in some countries, specifically Australia, for example. If you don't know, in Australia, you must do an IPC with an examiner every 12 calendar months to maintain your privileges. So it is a check ride in some countries, and it must be done by an examiner. It's not in the US, but I'm okay with it, right? Because it guarantees some standards, right? Again, at least in the US, you can't fail it, but they may not pass it either. And the standards are exactly the same as the instrument check ride. So what is required for an IPC? Well, according to 6157 Delta, which we've all read a billion times, that's the currency rule that requires it, right? An IPC should have like 6 approaches, holding, and tracking, right? That is one of the most common misconceptions. There is no minimum number of approaches required. Well, I guess you got to do 2, right? But you don't have to do 6 approaches, right? You may need to do 20, but you don't have to do 6. You do need to perform the specified maneuvers to instrument ACS standards. You see, in the new instrument rating ACS, there is a table in the back that specifies exactly what maneuvers are required for an instrument proficiency check. A lot of instructors don't know this, and they're just not. We've been teaching so long, and we were teaching before the ACS was a thing, and it was always kind of up to our discretion, right? Well, you can add stuff, but you can't subtract. So this is actually the requirement from the FAA. You must do these areas of operation from the Airman Certification Standards. So the minimum IPC maneuvers covered in the ACS that you must do for an IPC are holding, recovery from unusual attitudes, intercept and track navigational systems and arcs. You don't have to do a DME arc if you don't have DME, okay? Non-precision approach, a precision approach. LPV is absolutely a legal substitute for ILS if their airplane doesn't have ILS. There are airplanes out there with WASP GPS with no VLOC capabilities. An LPV approach, as long as it meets certain guidelines, does meet that qualification. Also, if the area does not have a convenient ILS, LPV can be substituted. So you need to read the guidelines. It's in the ACS. They need to do a missed approach. They need to do a circling approach. You're going to have to land eventually anyway, right? And of course, if we do multi-engine, they must do single engine operations in an approach. And this is critical, especially in the new TAA, the new fancy glass airplanes that I make my living off of. You got to do an approach with primary flight instruments, a loss of them. Critical, critical, critical. Please, everybody take this note down. Never, ever pull a circuit breaker to simulate a failure on an Aspen, a G3X, a G5, a G500, 600, G1000, Bendix King, or any kind of expensive computer monitor. A young instructor in Long Beach pulled in a circuit breaker on a G1000 PFD to simulate a failure, quickly realized he lost his comms, put it back in, and did $30,000 worth of damage from the voltage spike. You may not pull a circuit breaker to simulate a display failure. You just turn down the brightness. There's some techniques. You could cover it with sticky notes, there's companies that make little covers, but please do not pull circuit breakers on very expensive glass displays. But you must do it, okay? A lot of people go, well, it has a backup battery. Well, the backup battery doesn't always work either, okay? And they've got to do post-flight procedures. So the flight review in an IPC is not a check ride, but the client has to do the exact same ACS standards to pass a check ride. Am I the only one that's just a little bit confused on this? Well, the difference is this. On the flight review in the IPC, they can't fail it. And you can help them as much as you want to get to standards. You can teach all you want to. So many years ago, many people don't know this about me, many years ago, I went to the FAA Academy in Oklahoma City and did DPE training. And after 5 days of DPE training, I very quickly realized I would be a horrible examiner and I'm not qualified to be one because I can't not help. I can't not teach. I'd be the guy on the check ride that goes, add a little bit of power and pull up just a little, Liz, if you hold your hand like this, and the FAA would fire me so quickly, and rightfully so, right? I would be a horrible examiner because I'm not capable of not helping. I'm a born guy, like I want to teach, right? That's why I'm a teacher and why I'm not an examiner. It's a totally different job. So they can't possibly fail this. You just need to help them. That's the best thing about doing it. So why shouldn't an instructor sign a flight review or an IPC? Well, anytime the client doesn't fly to standards. Now, who here has had to tell a client no, and what was their reaction? Who here on the live program has had to tell a client no, they couldn't sign their flight review or IPC, and what kind of reaction did you get? James, sorry, James says, I have, and they just went to somebody else. Jack says, one never spoke to me again, and one thanked me. Tom says, I have, and they were not happy. Mark says, mine was not signed once, and I agreed. Well, good for you, Mark. Absolutely. That's what I say about Harry Leitcher, who wouldn't sign me off for my commercial check ride. I was annoyed at the time, but he was absolutely right. Right? Brian, hey, my friend Brian Schiff. Brian Schiff is on board, everybody. Brian Schiff's a master instructor and a good friend of mine, a captain with American Airlines. Brian and Mike Jesh do some great Garmin webinars. Brian said, I said no and they thanked me. Brian is such a nice guy. He absolutely, I believe he could take somebody's wallet and mug them and they would say thank you, but that's pretty funny, Brian. Panat says he did, and they didn't want to keep paying me for more flight instruction, right? Lots of people saying they were unhappy. Some people say they got through it, right? So here's a homework assignment. This is your first homework assignment. This is part of what I would like to build a library of and share with new flight instructors. I'd like you to write down in as much detail as you can. Your name is fine, but please don't give me names of the client. Tell me a story of when you had to tell a client, especially if it was a friend or somebody you had a relationship with, that you couldn't sign the flight review or IPC, their reaction, how you handled it, what you'd do differently, and what advice you would give to a new CFI. So before signing a flight review or an IPC, what are some of the responsibilities of the flight instructor when they do an IFR, an IPC or a flight review? Well, CFI responsibilities include complying with regulations, right? Making the client safer, some other things, right? There's a CFI responsibility that most people don't think of that you need to, okay? And I'm saying this because we're all professionals. You need to think about protecting yourself and your family from future liability. The United States is a very litigious society, right? Look, if you can win a lawsuit against a fast food chain because they hand you a cup of coffee and you get burned, like we all have figured out that the coffee is hot, right? My cousin was a lawyer for he was a corporate lawyer for a ladder company. Go into a hardware store and look at the 30 or 40 warning labels they put on ladders. Every single warning label is a lawsuit they've lost. No kidding, there's a warning label on ladders that says, do not use near power lines in a swimming pool. Like, really? Yeah, they lost that lawsuit. You betcha, right? So I don't believe there has been a successful lawsuit against a flight instructor after a fatality accident because of a flight review. Or after a flight review and after an IPC. But I'm flat out telling you, they can absolutely sue you. So whether you win the case or not has no bearing on how much you're going to spend in lawyers. So you need to protect yourself from liability. You need to protect your assets. And a lot of young instructors go, well, I don't have any assets. Yeah, but you might. And they can come back at you, or if they do successfully get a judgment against you, that judgment doesn't go away, right? So you need to protect yourself and your family from future liability. But what's the biggest responsibility of a flight instructor when doing an IPC or a flight review, right? What's the biggest, right? I'm going to say something pretty shocking. You are not responsible for ensuring that that pilot is safe in the future. I know it's shocking, but when you sign a flight review or an IPC, you're not responsible for ensuring the pilot is safe. You're responsible for the pilot, their family members, and every other passenger that flies with them. It's a much bigger responsibility than one person and a one-line logbook entry. That's the responsibility you're taking on. And it may not be a legal responsibility. I'm certainly not a lawyer. We can hire some of those. But this is a moral and a personal responsibility. You're not responsible for the pilot. You're responsible for their family that gets in that plane. You're responsible for their friends that go with them to a football game. You're responsible for anybody that gets hurt if that airplane hits a house, right? So before you sign that flight review, do they really meet the standards? If not, you're not doing them a favor by signing them off. Number 3, and this has come up with a lot of people, right? Not setting and managing expectations. In other words, we need to upsell safety more. The first thing we got to stop doing is absolutely never use or accept the term BFR with other instructors or clients. We just got to stop saying it. It's not a biannual flight review. It hasn't been for many, many years. It's just a flight review. We want to encourage people to do more than the minimum. Have y'all noticed that I'm not using the correct term learners? I keep using the term client because we need to be salespeople. We need to upsell the client to more than 2 hours of training. We need to sell them. We need to sell them hard. It's not for us to make more money or build more hours. That's not why we're trying to sell them. It's for their own safety. It's for their family members and their passengers. So when I say selling, what I really mean is showing the value. If you've ever asked anybody out on a date, you are a salesperson. If they said yes, they said no, you just weren't a good salesperson with that, right? You're just showing your value, right? Selling, everybody does it. And people have an image of salespeople. Salespeople are bad because they get these cheesy used car plaid coat people in their minds. No. Selling really means showing the value. And remember, their family and their safety depends on this. So how do you sell them? Well, you start out with an interview. Get as much information as you can. Explain the new rules. They're not new. They've always needed to meet the standards, but they're going to be new to them. They may not have heard this. So you're going to say, well, these are new rules, right? If you just say, well, these have always been the rules, you're making them wrong. Don't ever make people wrong. And use positive statements and lead them to what they really want. Say, listen, I know you're a really good pilot. The new rules do require that we do a minimum certain set of maneuvers, and you have to do to standards. It's certainly going to take more than what we used to be the legal minimum, but let's work together to make this a good value. Let's give you a bunch of free video classes to do before the meeting. That saves them money. I'm going to email you a bunch of reading material to read for free. That saves them a bunch of money. And tailor the program to them. Make it all about them. Ask if there's anything they want to cover that they've never done or they haven't done in a long time. Folks, what happens if we don't, quote, sell pilots on the value of doing more than the 2-hour flight review or IPC? They're going to go to somebody else who will take it, and they're going to get hurt one day. All right, number 2, this is a big mistake, just not doing enough, right? So ground has some required regs that you have to go over, but we'd like you to add, and when I say we, this is all from input and me, review their assigned homework. When you give people homework, you want to make sure they did it. You want to review the aircraft systems, especially the emergency procedures. Have them do a weight and balance on paper, right? Like have them dig out, show me where your fuel lines meet. Have them go through that POH. They probably haven't been through it in a while. Always make 2 weather briefings, one for the flight of, and flight instructors keep a stored weather briefing for a bad weather day with some unusual weather like METARs and TAFs so they can practice decoding that one. Just keep one stored. Absolutely, we want to have some scenarios in the ground, and this is where you want to use the FRAT app, right? So I've got some polls I want to launch. And the first one is, I've just launched a poll. What is the FRAT app? So the poll I've launched is, have you ever used the FRAT app before this webinar? Gonna let that run while I keep talking. So the FRAT app, if you're not familiar with it, and a lot of people aren't, is you go to the App Store on Apple. I'm honestly not sure if it's available on Google Play or not, but you're gonna search for Flight Risk Assessment Tool and make sure you get the light blue with the horizon that says FRAT. There's a knockoff version from another group, but you want this one. And make sure it's this one. It's the one from Z Digital Pro. This was actually developed by a lead FAA safety member named John Sternangle, who used to be the fast manager in Long Beach when I was a rep there. It started life out as a spreadsheet, and he would send it to me and a bunch of other instructors and get feedback. And they finally converted it over to an app, and the only way to get it out there because of federal rule is they had to give it away, sorry folks, to a private company who is essentially just selling it to cover their costs. That's why it's like $3, right? So it looks like the poll is doing pretty good, and it looks like 86% of people have never done that. Okay, so let me give you a sample FRAT scenario that you can use. With a low time VFR only private pilot with 150 hours based at a large towered airport like Long Beach in Southern California. And you say, well, a family member calls the pilot at work at 4:45 p.m. and says they're stuck in Apple Valley with car trouble and need to be home by 9 p.m. tonight for their kids. The pilot is night current and the weather is VMC with light and variable winds. So if you're not familiar with Southern California, there's some mountains to go over and some complex airspace to avoid, but he always gets flight following. It's less than an hour flight each way, and almost every pilot out there would go, no problem, right? Easy. Now let's just add some risk factors. Pilot and aircraft. He's flown maybe 8 hours in the last 90 days. It's gonna occur after work. He's not active in the wings program and he doesn't have an instrument rating. The flight school only has one plane left for rent and it's got a brand new GTN 750 that he's only flown once before. Now let's add some risk factors from the environment. It's gonna be a night flight with mountainous terrain to a non-towered airport. Well, mountainous terrain always has obstacles, but he always gets flight following and that actually reduces the risk. Now let's add some external pressures. The flight has to be made on schedule and it's family stress. When you do the PAVE checklist with people on like a whiteboard or something, they always kind of like look at you and go, yeah, kind of see that's bad, but they don't really get it. So let me show you the FRAT app in action. So here is the flight risk assessment tool. And you notice I put Joe private pilot and I've already preloaded that he's got 150 hours flying a 172 VFR from Long Beach to Apple Valley. Watch the words in the green bubbles at the top and watch that slider. Let's add some risk factors. So he's flown less than 15 hours in the last 90 days. It's going to occur after work. He's got less than 40 hours with the avionics. It's going to be a night flight into mountainous terrain, which means there are always obstacles. But he's going to use flight following. And you notice when he added flight following, the risk actually went down a little bit. Then let's add those external pressures. Flight must be made on schedule with family. The thing went red. I don't know about you all, but red is not really a good color. If JFK Jr. had done this FRAT app, he might not have gotten in the plane. If you teach students to use a written checklist to pre-flight the airplane, how about we give them a really cool visual app to pre-flight them? And this is the golden moment. This is how you can show them the benefits. Now say, so it's obviously very dangerous making that flight, right? And you go, well, yeah, I didn't realize it was that dangerous. You say, well, yeah. But if you flew more often and you did some kind of training every 90 days, and it doesn't even have to be with CFI, it can be some online training, or it could be in a simulator. If you were active in the FAA Wings program and you got your instrument rating, and you really got a mastery level of training on your avionics before you flew, and you flew the LPV approach and you never canceled IFR and went visual, what would happen in the same scenario? Well, right now it says reduce risk exposure. Well, let's do that. Let's say you have IFR. It immediately drops down. Mastery level of training with the avionics, right? Instruction received, wings phase. Oh, look. Precision approach. Then you look at your client and say, being active in the wings program, constant recurrent training and getting your instrument rating is one way that you can show an outside viewpoint of risk factors they may not consider, the value of adding an instrument rating, the value of regular training, and accidents preventing. It's a visual way of showing them. So that's why I'd like y'all to use FRAT app. So for flight review suggestions, it should always be done on a cross country away from the local area with scenarios, unplanned diversions, and simulated emergencies. Your second homework assignment, folks, is create a cross-country flight review scenario for a low-time VFR pilot at your airport, your area, with the following, please. 3 unplanned distractions or problems that you can add or simulate. An open door, a cell phone call, one radio going out, whatever you want. Make sure that they have to intercept a Victor airway and fly to an unplanned diversion airport without using GPS or ForeFlight, and then add a unique challenge or something really fun. That's your homework assignment. I want you to create a cross-country flight review scenario for your airport in your area, okay? IPC suggestions, cross-country always, ODP, SIDS and STARS, unpublished holding, scenarios, unplanned diversions, and simulated emergencies. So what's the number one biggest mistake that really good instructors make? Just not using the wings program. So I'm going to launch another poll here. And the poll is, do you currently use the wings program for at least 90% of all your flight reviews? So do you currently use the wings program for 90% of all your flight reviews? And just answer on the poll, please. And it looks like you guys did not see the app. Okay, so tell you what, folks, it looks like because I didn't close that silly poll, I didn't show, my bad, folks, I didn't show the actual app because I still have the poll blocking. I'm so sorry. So let's do the poll. Let's show you the app. I'm sorry, folks. Let's very quickly show you what the app looks like. So let's add those risk assessments. You can all see the app, the FRAT app now, right? Okay. See how the words are going up when I add less than 40 hours with avionics, night flight, mountainous terrain, obstacles, flight following, flight must be made on schedule, family or work. See how that is dangerous, right? So everyone can see the FRAT app now? Great, I'm so sorry, folks. I don't normally use polls. All right, so now if we show the pilot keeping that same screen, adding flying more often, CFI every 90 day, wings participation, instrument rating, mastery training, and LPV approaches. So we still see that red. Now let's show that student by adding your instrument rating, it immediately drops the risk. Getting instruction every 90 days, or flying more than 15 hours every 90 days, getting instruction, being active in the wings program, and always doing a precision approach, never canceling and going visual. It visually shows them. So I really apologize that it did not show the screen. Okay, so the FRAT app shows them outside viewpoints, risk, accidents, right? Okay, great. All right, so here's your homework assignment. Creating a cross-country flight review scenario for a low-time BFR pilot at your airport with 3 unplanned distractions or problems you can add or simulate. A Victor Airway, they will intercept and fly to a diversion airport without using GPS, and a unique challenge or something fun. For IPC suggestions, a cross-country away from the local area, ODP SIDS and stars, unpublished holding, scenarios, unplanned diversions, and simulated emergencies. All right, so the number one biggest mistake is not using the wing program. And I'm going to go ahead and launch the poll now. We're only going to run for a minute. How many of you use the wings program for at least 90% of all of your flight reviews? So how many of you use the wings program for at least 90% of all of your flight reviews? Okay, I'm going to close the poll and hopefully y'all can see my screen again. So the results were about only about a third of you use the wings program for at least 90% of your flight review. When you use wings on the flight review and the IPC, there's a lot of benefits. It gives the structure. It allows you to customize the program for each client. And it's the best way to get people off the minimums and into that continuing education mindset. Benefits of the wings to the client, they get insurance discounts. Avemco, who actually sponsors the wings program, if you do a wings phase, you get 5 or 10%. I think you get 5% off your annual premiums, which really helps. It's very helpful if you get that pilot deviation investigation from the FSDO. Listen, my last 2 clients for the private 3-day IFR mastery program were actually FAA inspectors. Yeah, they hire me too. And I know I thought it was a trap too, right? Like, oh, I'm going into the Death Star, I'm in trouble. No, they were just 2 nice guys who wanted to be better at their avionics. And we had a really long talk about how handling pilot deviations. And they both confirmed a lot of what I knew. They absolutely do not want to suspend or revoke a pilot certificate. They just want to get compliance. And the compliance philosophy means they just want to make the pilot better. Like, do you need remedial training? Well, let's get you into the remedial training. We just want you to be better, right? So if you're active in the wings program already, that shows them that you are already a believer in that, right? And it really encourages the client to continue with that continuing education. So why don't more CFI use the WINGS program? No kidding, folks. A lot of flight instructors don't even know about it. And that's our fault, right? We need to tell them, right? We need to go to every new instructor and every instructor academy and make this is a critical thing. But I've heard some flight instructors say, well, it's just too hard. Well, that's okay. I got some friends over at the Wings Industry Network, and it's called WIN. They've created something called Easy Win. I want to tell you about some really special people. That Paul Berger guy is a heck of a character. Loretta Webb, a dear friend of mine. Ron Timmermans, the 2021 National Flight Instructor of the Year, absolutely has replaced me. I'm no longer relevant. A great friend of mine, very good. John Typen, I believe John is actually on the webinar tonight. An amazing guy. He was the National Flight Instructor of the Year for 2005, it looks like. They all got together along with this great board of directors, Charlie and David and Karen, another National Flight Instructor of the Year, or a National Fast Group of the Year, Bob from NAFI, another Bob, Paul, Jason Blair, everybody knows Jason Blair, Kevin Clover, one of the nicest guys at the FAA, and David St. George, one of the founders of SAFE. They all got together to get people into Wings, and they've recently rolled out this Easy Wings website. It's not really an app, but it's a very easy way for flight instructors, and it's also good for students and DPs, but it's a really easy way for flight instructors to give Wings credits for flight reviews and IPCs from your mobile device. So what it is if you go to easywings.net on your mobile phone or your iPad, or your tablet, it's just a mobile-friendly website that makes it really easy to almost instantly give Wings credit for flight reviews and IPCs to your clients. And if you want more details, please go to easywings.net. It's an amazing program. It's taken some of the navigation work out of the FAA safety website. Okay. So benefits of Wings flight review for the CFI is when you use the Wings program, it proves you met the standard. It sets you above other instructors as an expert, and it removes the liability concerns, right? Remember, as far as I know, okay, and if anybody knows differently, please let me know, okay? As far as I know, there's never been a successful lawsuit against a flight instructor for a fatal accident after a flight review or an IPC, as far as I know. I'm not saying there weren't lawsuits, and I don't know what it costs to defend yourself against a lawsuit, right? But I will tell you it's very expensive, right? So the benefit of issuing it through Wings is it takes all the liability off you. Because by completing any phase of the Wings program, you don't have to do the flight review, and neither do they. That's actually 6156.echo. I'm so sorry. I'm going to do the best I can to keep my voice going as long as I can. So 6156 part echo says a person who has, within the period specified, 24 months, accomplished one or more phases of the FAA Wings program doesn't need a flight review, which means you don't have to sign anything. You're not giving them a flight review. All you're saying is they met the standards set by the FAA to accomplish a Wings phase. That's why examiners have quite a high level of immunity from lawsuits after passing somebody on a check ride. Because the examiner's not saying they're a safe pilot. The examiner's not saying they're never going to get hurt. An examiner's not going to say, well, they're safe in 20 knot winds in the mountains. An examiner, when they say you've passed a check ride, says they met the standards set by the FAA on this date. When you sign them off for a Wings phase, you're saying they met the standards set by the FAA on this date. you're doing a favor for the student because you're covering so much more and you're protecting your family. So how committed are you? Well, I should definitely be committed myself, but how committed are you to helping? So if you're committed to partnering with the guy in the pink shirt and pilotsafety.org to reduce GA accidents, there's a really smart guy on the right side of the screen. JFK said, there are risk and cost to action, but they're far less than the long-range risk of comfortable inaction. So if you're really committed to working with us and making a difference, share your pro tips with us and let's get it out to others. Share this program with others. Get active in the professional development groups. Sign up for more webinars and get your own level of mastery, not minimums training. We need your pro tips. Tell us about saying no to signing an IPC or flight review, the client's reaction, and what you would do differently today. Create that cross-country flight review scenario for a low-time VFR pilot at your airport, your area, with 3 unplanned distractions or problems you can add or simulate. A Victor airway that they'll intercept and fly to a diversion airport without using GPS. Any unique challenge or fun. Share this course with others. Post this stuff on Facebook, talk to other instructors, share something with a student, do whatever. Please join the FAST team. It's real simple. If you click on resources and then about the FAST team, there's a statement from Patricia, the new leader of the FAST team. Then you just click on join the FAST team. Most of us are volunteers. We'd love to have you. Sign up for more webinars. Obviously, the FAA Safety's got a ton. If you want to go to pilotsafety.org webinar, we have a ton. If you'd like to invest in your education, if you want to read my IFR book about all my crazy real world tips, we do have CFI referral programs, but if we do offer a discount on our video training programs for you, if you'd like to get better at Avidyne, ForeFlight, Garmin, or single pilot IFR, just make sure you use the code CFI. If you have questions or comments, if you'd like to upload and share your CFI pro tips, your saying no story, VFR scenarios, if you'd like to share this program with others, or you'd like to download more free resources, this is the website you want to go to. It will be fully functional by tomorrow at about noon Central Time, including a replay of this video. But for now, do you all have any questions or comments? I really do want to say thank you. We had at one point about 800 people online. We had 1,400 people registered. So we really thank you for joining us tonight. And you really helped keep my voice going just from your participation. Noah says, Gary, where do you currently CFI based out of? Noah, supposedly I live in North Texas near Fort Worth. I mostly live out of Hilton. I do private 3-day mastery programs for owners of airplanes that are already good pilots that want to be great at their new Avidyne or Garmin avionics suite. So I mostly travel. I go all over the country and all over the world. The FRAT app, the Flight Risk Assessment Tool app, I will put a link on that website. I know it was hidden. It's by Zdesk, and I think it's $3.99. I'll put a logo and a link, but it's on the App Store, search for Flight Risk Assessment Tool. It is not the one from MMOPA. It's a nice one, but it's not the one. You want it from Zdesk, I believe. It's kind of a light aquamarine color with a horizon. Angela just passed her CFI check ride. She thinks this will help. Everybody's saying thank you. So appreciate it. Lots of people saying thank you. Somebody tells me to eat some soup. I will certainly do that. Do you get wings credit for this? Yes, of course you will get wings credit for this. Bruce says he's not seen Easy Wings mentioned before. It's a very convenient program, right? So, all right, well, thank you all so much. If I don't get to your comment or question in the next minute or so, send me an email. I'm never hard to find. Gary R, that's Gary R. Golf Alpha Romeo Yankee Romeo at pilotsafety.org. Let's see if we got any other comments or questions. No, hey, congratulations, Christopher. He just passed his CFI initial. Well, you all were awesome. My voice is done. Y'all have a great night. This is the guy in the pink shirt for pilotsafety.org, and we will see you all soon. Thanks for coming.